Okay, thank you very much. And thanks again, Ken, for your insightful comments. And obviously, it sounds like airports and local small warehouses are things that we need to be looking at going forward. And don't worry, everybody, it will all work out in the end. So don't be too discouraged. Everything will be okay. So anyway, just continuing our presentations this afternoon, I'm Steve Smith, another of the SAI past presidents. I was president between 2010 2012. And it is now my privilege to introduce our next presenter, Clive Dickin. Clive is the CEO of the UK's National Access and Scaffolding Confederation, the NASC. Yes, maybe I was asked to do this because I do have similar accent to Clive, as you will see when he comes up here. The other thing that is similar between the organization in the UK and ourselves is that both organizations included or added the word access into their names a few years ago to show the encompassing of access and scaffolding together. Clive is an experienced business leader with over 25 years in the built environment trade body sectors. His career has spanned construction, aviation, healthcare, and media, driving growth, innovation, and operational excellence. Early in his career, Clive worked with John Cleese's Video Arts, a pioneering corporate training company where he developed expertise in communications, education, and stakeholder engagement. A major achievement was leading the transition from Corgi to the Gas Safe Register. I'm sure he'll explain what that is, while he was CEO of the Association of Plumbing and Heating Contractors. His lobbying efforts resulted in improved gas safety regulations, securing lasting benefits for public safety and the industry as a whole. As National Director of the Association of Air Ambulances, Clive secured a £2.2 million, that's about $3 million, annual VAT tax savings for air ambulance charities, and a £31.1 million, so about $40 million, in government grants, funding new aircraft, training facilities, and nighttime operations. He also established the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Air Ambulances, strengthening political support for the sector. Clive has led several industry bodies, including the National Federation of Builders and the Institute of Export and International Trade, delivering financial stability, membership growth, and improved governance. Since 2023, he's been CEO of the National Access and Scaffolding Confederation, achieving 24% membership growth, modernizing governance, establishing the TG30 compliance sheets, aiding management of liability, and launching SCAFX, which is now Europe's largest scaffolding and access exhibition. With a proven track record in leadership, advocacy, and commercial strategy, Clive continues to shape professional standards across multiple sectors in the UK. So Clive will now present and share his strategies on litigation prevention and professional standards with his session titled, How to Avoid Litigation the UK Way. Please welcome Clive Dickin.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see a good turnout. Always worry about that word litigation and how many are going to come to a presentation on it. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you to Mike and the executive team for inviting me. It's great to see how NASC and SAIA are actually now collaborating and working together. And over the past few weeks, we've been sharing a lot of knowledge, experience, and it's great to hear many of the members here in the room today and actually around the exhibition and the experiences they're having. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of a video. Hopefully I'm pressing the right button. There we go.
Hurts, does it, sir?
Oh, no. I'm just doing this to while away the journey.
I'm in a hurry.
Why on earth am I showing you 1950s British comedy? Well, I liken this film, I look at it and I think about, well, hold on. If that doesn't typify what goes wrong in the relationship between a patient, in this case, or a customer, who's possibly had something go wrong, that's actually now facing challenges, problems, not enjoying the experience, and then actually being ejected. What happens then? Well, nobody was expecting actually any of those problems, but it inevitably lands in the lap of a lawyer. A lawyer that wants to litigate, that wants to take you through a process and your client through a process, actually making your lives more expensive, ending in a client being lost, and ultimately your reputation's being risked. And that's why we've actually, with inside the UK, been over a steady period of time, steadily clarifying and getting rid of the grey where the lawyers can sit within. As Steve mentioned, I've done very many different things. I'm going to admit it now. I am not a scaffolder. I'm not somebody from the sector. I'm actually a lawyer. I started off as a human resourcist, working with John Cleese, making and writing training videos, but understanding the competence of individuals and the impact that the individual can have on a contract. Getting it wrong, creating a problem. Legislation, Steve mentioned gas safe. You may remember Corgi. Corgi was the original registration body back in 1978, the Gas Safety Installation and Use Regs. God, I'm an interesting chap that I can actually quote that legislation. But that legislation was formed from a massive accident, killing 32 people. A massive accident that actually involved a contractor being actually prosecuted and going to prison. That is litigation. That is it in an actual nutshell. Equally, aviation. I worked with the air ambulances. I did work with the current Prince of Wales. Legislation of getting him on an aircraft, you'd think being almost the next king, you'd know he could get easily on it. No. We had so many pieces of legislation and checks that we had to make sure was right. Again, why? To prevent litigation, to prevent the actual problems. Why? There was grey, there was ambiguity. And that went right the way through to Parliament, working with Westminster, making sure that actually the lawmakers understood it. And that's actually where we need to start focusing in the UK and actually making sure that the scaffolding and access sector has better legislation. Why? It clarifies that lack of ambiguity, the greyness. So, a little bit about NASC. I thought this would be helpful just to contextualise what we are as an organisation and how it links back to you here in the US. We're a membership organisation. We are voluntary. Members join us voluntarily. We represent roughly 80% of the scaffolding pound in the UK. Currently based on the ONS, the Office for National Statistics in the UK, it's worth about 2.8 billion in 2024. Of that, we charge our subscriptions based on turnover, and we had a turnover of just over 2.3 billion within the membership, so circa 80%. But is it all the big contractors? Well, no, it isn't. We have a range. We have 10 that are really, really significant, and they account for almost 1 billion of that 2.3 billion turnover. The rest are micro, SME, medium-sized entities. And I'm saying this to show you the proportionality of what we'll cover in the next few slides about the standards, the auditing processes, the checks and balances that NASC has actually over a period of time put in place to remove that grey, to remove the litigation opportunity. I'm going to start with a video. Oh, no sound. Everybody's worst nightmare in this room, I would imagine.
Oh!
Sound. Now, I don't want to summarise what went wrong. We're all thinking ties, contractor, scaffolder should have taken away the sheeting. It was a windy day. It was actually a storm back at the beginning of last year. Doesn't matter. There's a lawyer involved. Something's gone wrong somewhere. Somebody's going to be held accountable. The reputation of the contractor is damaged. In this case, the district council, who actually allowed the licenses and the approvals for the actual work to go ahead, was being questioned. All of that. as a result of something going wrong. And what the grey in actually where we work in the scaffolding and access sector actually has to be removed. You need to start actually getting not just standards, they're important, but actually from the standard to the point of actual operation, you need to build credible quality and structures. And in the UK, that's fundamentally what we've done. We've done that because of the litigation jigsaw. Well, what do we mean by the litigation jigsaw? Actually, our previous speaker couldn't have summed it up better. We've talked about tariffs, uncertainty. You as businesses will face a whole host of challenges as the evolution of your business progresses. Labour shortages, we've just heard about the challenges. We've heard about tariffs, inflation, new contractual obligations and stipulations being placed upon you, disruptors entering the market, new competitors. All of those options, all of those variables are a piece of the jigsaw that can be missing, that make you want to, do something different, maybe cut a corner. And that's actually something we have to resist as a sector. And we have to create that clarity through standardization and actually creating some very straightforward rules, but ones importantly, which we'll talk about, that are recognized by the fundamental client. And actually getting it so that the client demands it is the key part of the success that within the UK we've actually achieved. Here's the 4 key ingredients. We look at corporate governance. We look at corporate competence. We look at risk assessment and method statements. I'm sure you're all doing these. But we do those to recognised UK-wide standards that can't be argued. We also look at regular insurance, set insurances, guidance. Guidances, in NASC's case, we have over 132 now, currently published. And I'll demonstrate with the help of John in the AV booth one a little later. Then we've got to talk about individual competence. And it was great experiencing and chatting to many of you yesterday around training, digitisation, where are we going, how are we going to deliver learning? Learning's only one part of it. You've got to prove competence, like that driving test. Are you able to drive down that road safely? Well, the minute you get the licence, yeah, you are. But are you experienced? How good are you? That's competence. And within Scissors, we absolutely look at that. We have the endpoint assessment like the driving test. And I'll touch on that structure a little later as we go through the presentation. Then we talk about design. Well, we already recognise design. But actually in the UK, only 12% of scaffolding is actually with the design. Many of it is based on the manufacturer's instruction manual. You're all system scaffolders within this room. Well, how does the client know what they're getting? Yesterday we talked about new scaffold inspection regimes starting to emerge. Is the scaffold inspector going to be on your side or going to be on your client's side? What does the design say? Well, if there's ambiguity and there isn't a design, where do you actually place a really small independent scaffold that's actually not cost effective to get a design? And that's where actually TG20 and TG30 as the standards come in and actually fill the vacuum of the greyness to create clarity so that there can't be any litigation. And finally, we come back to the client. Recognised, having standards and actually have a process in place that clients can trust removes the ability that when there's a breakdown in the relationship. So we'll explore how that works. NASC's compliance is now the badge of quality within scaffold and access within the UK. Currently, the top 20 Tier 1 contractors actually demand NASC membership as a pre-qualification. Build UK's membership, National Federation of Builders, the Scottish Building Federation, all stipulate NASC as the actual preeminent quantity and quality. Why do we do that? To make sure that the client is actually confident and comfortable that the standards that are going to be actually delivered are actually there. We have a code of conduct that expects a degree of behaviour. Equally, the regulator of the United Kingdom, the Health and Safety Executive, recognises TG20 and TG30. Now, these are substantially above the standards of the British standards and the EN standards. They take away the ambiguity. Equally, we have over 140 guidances, 132 we publish ourselves, The others, we partner with other organisations. Loading a vehicle. Yes, we have a guidance on how to load a vehicle. Why? It's still part of the risk process. Why? Because it could delay the delivery of the project. And if the guidance isn't being followed, then absolutely, the membership is held to account. The member is held to account. But that brings that assurance that the project will be delivered on time and actually without any incidental problems around the vehicle. As I mentioned, PQQs. It goes beyond the PQQ though. The PQQ is just a part of the administrative process of actually winning the tender. It also goes beyond that. So when the QSs are actually measuring and saying, right, have you done this correctly? They can refer back to the guidance. And NASC works regularly and consistently with clients, advising actually and supporting the client against potentially the scaffolding and access contractor. Get that? A trade body that's actually speaking to the client. But actually the member organisation supports it. Why? Because they've endorsed and they've built the guidance. How do we assure it? We have to audit. 100% of NASC members are audited. And the primary focus of this is around safety. And we're really proud. Every single year we do a full safety audit report that goes out from every single member, including all of the RIDDOR reported incidents. We're that transparent with the client community that we can actually make sure there's real confidence in what we do. The actual contractors have to submit a range of information, desktop orientated. Their RAMs, the varying operational procedures, everything we do. And with new members, we physically go out after they've provided all of that information and we inspect them. Not just the site, not just their office, where we do check for white lines in yards, proper racking, proper quality control. We go out, randomly select actually some of their sites. If they're a larger organisation, that's more sites. If they're a smaller organisation, it's less sites. Every 2 years, we then go through that process with the member. If we get more complaints, though, we will actually go back and visit them. And next year, we're actually bringing in a risk-based approach. So if you get no complaints and you get no non-conformances, and we're actually structuring it into majors and minors, we will actually do less auditing, rewarding those that are on top game and monitoring their qualities and are abiding by the guidance documents and structures we put in place. Further, the operatives. We demand 90% carded operatives are present in the payroll of the organisation. And we fundamentally audit that. So that's everybody from a labourer, for a trainee, scaffolder, and advanced scaffolder. And there are ratios. We expect 50% to be actually fully qualified scaffolders, and I'll come on to the scissors cards in a moment. We must see ongoing training and education. Again, part of the standards that we produce. Toolbox talks, NASC guidance. We should be seeing it actually being delivered. We look for training records. We look for the training records inside the human resource records. We also look for CPD. We want to see continual professional development. Now, within the actual scissors card program, there is a 5-year process. I'll come on to that in a moment. But if they're not in that space, if they are working in the design area, well, we want to see if they are part of the Institute of Engineers, where's your CPD? How are you monitoring that? How are you managing it? And again, we look at company registrations, we look at the financial structures of the business. If there's significant change in the management, it happens, the business is sold. We want to see an undertaking from the new management coming in, the systems and procedures will be followed. Why? Because it maintains then the credibility of the overall integrity of the system. Moving on then to actually the scaffolding product, we go further. And NASC is actually not very well known for this area of its work, but it's something we've radically changed last year in actually improving what's called NASC approved products. This focused specifically on the load-bearing elements of the scaffolding and access equipment that's actually put out there. We expect NASC members to only purchase NASC approved products or equivalent. They're fundamentally checked, not only for the physical strengths, but also ethical manufacturing techniques and ultimately the policies of the organisation. We do raw material testing. We physically take them, sample frame off the actual production line or in the actual yard or at the actual dock before they get used by the actual contractor. And we physically check them. We want to make sure that the boards meet the standards. We want to make sure that the steel is of the correct standard. Why? Because the complete process is then followed through the quality of the audit. Again, eliminating the grey that legals can actually get into, that the client can then say, sorry, you've not deployed the right product. Moving on, scissors. This is a major area of work. Unfortunately, it's just one slide as well, which I find quite strange. Scissors as a complete package is an organisation that NASC with the Unite Union some 50 years ago established. Initially, it was a pay grading process. We wanted to separate what a labourer got paid from a scaffolder and an advanced scaffolder, and we wanted to pay differently. That's then evolved, got more and more around training. That then evolved into, well, actually, it's competence. And within that, we've also got the apprenticeship programme. On the screen, you can see all the range of cards that we provide. So currently, we have got a lot of tube and fit. We also have a lot of system, and it is growing in popularity, mainly because of our talent challenges that we've got within the UK. But with that, we have a card that covers every single one of these competencies. And there's legislation, which I'll come on to in a moment, that demands competence now. And it has to be at a level 2 qualification, a national vocational qualification level 2 as a bare minimum. And if you don't have that, you're not allowed on site. You're not allowed onto the construction site. Why? The client has confidence in the card. It removes the ambiguity of the potential for litigation. Does it prevent us from having things go wrong? No, but it mitigates and reduces constantly the capability of a client going, oh, hold on, is that person competent? Is that contractor competent? And like the driving license, you have to then still continue with your scaffolder's card through a process of CPD. And at the end of the 5 years, if you've not done your CPD, your card is not replaced. And it is that precise and that prescriptive. So let's move on to design. This is something that NASC has done very, very well in my opinion, but you'd expect me to say that. TG20 with tube and fit was the seminal moment of actually creating a clear set standard. You all know tube and fit, it doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with prescriptive processes. It was massively grey. But actually TG20 clarified that and cleared that up. It lays out not just ultimately the process of actually erecting and dismantling the actual scaffold, but it actually talks about how you actually design as well. Again, every site should have a compliance sheet if they haven't got a design. And that can be for TG20 for tube and fit or TG30 for system scaffolding. It should, again, be held by the scaffolding contractor. If there's alterations to the actual structure, a new compliance sheet or design should be being built and provided. Why? It eliminates that grey. Nobody can argue, that isn't what I'm actually being paid for. That isn't what I've actually asked for. Oh, is it safe? Will it take the weight? Will it take the wind loading? Oh, TG20 and TG30 confirms that. Let's get to the statistics. EN 12810, 12810. Again, these are the base standards. These are the base European standards. TG30 compliance scaffolds, though, are applicable to all of those and higher. And we work on building that complete transparency within the system. Equally, it's a performance standard. It's a standard that is consistent. And with TG30, for the first time ever, we've covered across all of the different manufacturers currently within the UK. And that's 13 manufacturers and actually 18 products. And what I'm going to try and do now, John, is can we do the demo? I'm going to try and get John to show us how easy it is to make a compliance sheet while he's just loading it up. Anybody want to have a guess on how many compliance sheets we issue on a monthly basis in the UK? Thousands. That's a very broad. Narrow it down. 70,203. Have we got anybody on an advance of 72,000? I wish it was that many, but no, go on. 30,000. Oh, the UK's not that big, no. 12,500, typically a month. That's 12,500 scaffolds that are being built, that are being regulated, and that are being actually put out of that grey area. Let's be honest, the manual is great. Don't get me wrong, manufacturers, I'm not criticising the manual, but you can't expect a manual to be read by the client on a small independent, on a shop front. It's just not going to happen, and that's where TG30 fits in. So John, can we click on TG30? And if we do the E-guide, let's do independent. And this is where, unfortunately, we are here in the US. We don't have the wind maps for the US, so he's going to select my, oh, Sully. Is that something to do with Monsters University? Okay. John, can you just waggle the independent around just so that we can just see? So what you can see is a 3D actual example of what's being produced. And as you can see, we've grouped all the different types of scaffolding that is currently available in the system into effectively 4 groups. I'm sure you recognise them. If we select Rosette, please, John. As you can see, here's all the manufacturers that we are now currently working with, and in September, the first of those will be going live. Currently, though, we have the generic all-inclusive one standard, which works to the lowest component engineering value. If you could just select the TG30 compliant, thank you. And John, go build whatever you want. Go big, go small. And as you can see, you can, as simple as a click, and this is doable on a laptop, on your iPad, on your phone, etc. Could we just take it down to six bays and 10 meters high, which is still quite a, there we go. Brilliant, if we hit next. Let's do fully decked. Let's do general purpose, which is highlighted. As you can see, you can get different loadings. We also do the metric and imperial. So if we hit next, let's do fully sheeting. That's it. Let's put the pavement lift in because we're doing a shop. Let's put a two-bay bridge to let. There we go. If we just take it down 1 lift, there we go. Love it. And take it down 1 lift as well. As it's a shop front. If you hit next, now offers you the tie patterns. Click whichever you prefer, John. Voila. There is your compliance sheet. And if you hit Save PDF, John, and as if by magic, subject to the internet working, there is your PDF that you can give to your client, giving absolute assurance of the wind loading, the leg loading, the ties that are required, and the actual basic design. And if we scroll a bit further down, John, in the PDF, have you got the, well, further down it actually goes into, there we go, all the varying components that are then held. It's an extremely powerful tool. Put that in the hands of your site supervisors, put that in the hands of your teams, and they can actually give assurances. You can actually also be making sure that in the tendering processes and PQQs, you're actually giving qualitative, valuable information to the client, mitigating. Well, you didn't say it was that big. You didn't say it could hold this weight. It's not big enough. Hold on, the ties are in the wrong place. All points that you, I'm sure, get on a regular basis. Thank you, John. Can we just go back to the presentation? Okay, so that's design. Where are we going? UK client market at the moment is going through an unprecedented period of change. The shocking events of Grenfell have seen the UK government legislate. For the first time, we have had a massive transformation around building safety. And the Building Safety Act has now been launched, which has resulted in the Building Safety Regulator fundamentally now establishing any construction over 11 metres has to actually be approved. On top of that, we have the Health and Safety Act, which is again an area that the legislators will look to. Again, those that are wanting to litigate will now look at these key areas and go, have you performed to the required specification? And in the UK, those specifications are the NASC guidances. Equally, we've got legislation where if you get it really wrong, and in the case of that horrific collapse that we saw in the video earlier, if that had hit somebody, a general member of the public, you're into corporate manslaughter territory. And so everything of bringing that greyness away, the legislation in the UK can be absolutely taken to the highest level, resulting in 10 years in prison. And if you then look at the quantity surveyors, let's go the other end of the spectrum, just them trying to wiggle out of paying you on time, looking for the retention to be retained. This is about eliminating that greyness. And we've got to continue to actually push the boundaries in making sure that these standards that are built on the, yes, European standards are accepted and recognised by clients, removing the greyness. So the future, the domestic sector, as I'm here in Texas, I can say the Wild West. It is. You can see that picture, that was actually in London a few weeks back. Amazing, beautiful structure, don't you think? Unbelievable. I mean, seriously, how on earth has that been built? But anyway, we still have a requirement in the domestic sector in the UK for CDM, yet we see that. It's shocking. We still have the rules of health and safety at work. Shocking that that is being built, and it is commonplace. I'm sure it is here in the US. Why? Because there's no compliance. Our enforcement isn't there, and the client, with the greatest respect, knows no better. They're not a major contractor. So NASC is now starting to look at how we can raise awareness of the increased risk of potential injury, not just the people that are actually using that carbuncle, but ultimately the people that use the drive or the garden around their homes, equipment falling off, damage to property. I recently saw a fantastic clip on LinkedIn of a beautiful brand new Porsche with a coupler in the bonnet. Brilliant. I didn't save that image, but you know, that's where we need to be starting to actually make the changes. And we've got to talk about just general unsafe practice. I'm quite passionate about this because this is our shop front as a sector. Every time you drive down the road and you leave your home and you see this, actually it's what your customers are seeing, but also what the future scaffolder that gets turned off it is seeing. I don't want to work in an industry like that. Their parents don't want to see it. So it's actually almost about turning that whole evolutionary cycle and actually getting the shop front to actually be right. And that is a mission that we're very committed on in the UK. So to wrap up and to sum up, you need to look at proven corporate competence. Proven in that it's audited, that it has standards, that the standards aren't just the base, they go beyond. You have to go beyond to remove the ambiguity that lawyers love. They love to bill by the hour. Well, remove that. If there's a clear structure that is unambiguous, you eliminate any of the possibilities of an argument. You need to look at design. And in the fringes of where it's too expensive because the project is so small, look for standardization. We have in the UK. That standardization removes, again, ambiguity. It removes the ability for somebody to say, well, you didn't deliver what I asked for. Well, actually, here's the document. Here's the compliance sheet. It was. Handing over certificates and everything else goes with it, but that comes back to your competence as an operation. And then finally, your workforce. It has to be a workforce that is from cradle to grave compliant, that starts off as a labourer, has a regular update, has CPD, has all the toolbox talks, and I know you do that. If they then move into a certain product, okay. But what about if that person moves on to another employer? That should be transferable skills. There should be no ambiguity. Why? It's to build the confidence with the client. Once the client sees the license to practice, quasi in our case, license to practice, they eliminate the ambiguity of actually your workforce is not competent. I'm happy to take questions.
What's the safety factor that you guys are applying out there
Around about the 1.6. And if you look at the TG30 compliance sheets, we've had, I'm just doing the maths, 23 engineers working on that project constantly now for 6 months to give you a level of the actual oversight. And that's three tiers. So we've got our initial contractor, CADS, who's done all of the work on the engineering calculations. We've got an internal team inside NASC who's then checking CADS' work. And then we've got an independent engineer who's checking our work to give you a flavour of the level of actual engineering tolerance that we're allowing. Any other questions? Are you letting me off easy, folks?
Say that does go to legislation. You know, you get that sometimes where you have companies that say, hey, here's the legislation, support you during being a member that you guys support the legislation.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Something that NASC has for several years played with the idea is great. Let's get NASC into what we in the UK call a statutory instrument. And in the case of GasSafe, it had the gas installation and use regulations that empowered the Secretary of State to appoint an organisation called GasSafe to fundamentally do that. We could argue for that. Here's a question though. GasSafe register. Guess how long you have to do CPD every 5 years for one of their 35 competence sections? It's 5 days. If you do domestic gas boilers, that's 5 days. If you do domestic gas fires, that's another 5 days. If you do cookers, 5 days. And that's set by the government, not by the sector, not by the industry, not by the clients, by the government. And so as soon as you hand over that right to a legislator, you are bound to work within the legislation, bound to work within the standards that they set, not the industry sets. And so the challenges that we are facing and have argued internally about is, do we do that? Do we hand it over? Do we give it to everybody? In the case of Corgi, and I mentioned the major incident resulted in gas safety installation and use, Ronan Point, massive explosion killing 37 people in London. They went from 32% of the sector being in membership to 99%. So it levels the playing field, undoubtedly. But as a sector, you hand over the ability to actually have something that's quite productive. And if you look at our sector, if you look at the scaffolding and access sector in the UK, 80% are in. So we feel in quite a positive position to not want to look at that remaining 20%. But the domestic sector, that's the big area, that's the grey, that's the area that are unregistered, haven't done the proper training, are working off a transit van. Yeah, and so do we need the legislation to get that final bit? I'd like to work on informing the client, I think. Get the client. In the UK, we wouldn't buy a bunch of bananas without it being a little sticker on it saying fair trade. We've got to start getting the actual safety and access industry, the scaffolding and access industry, into that space where we don't want to buy anything unless it's got an NASC badge. And that's the position I think our board, my board, is thinking. So there's two elements, two structures. If they are employed, yes. Some less scrupulous employers, and I'll say it as it is, say, okay, yeah, your CPD is coming up, but you've got to pay for it. We don't approve of that. We don't condone that. We think that's wrong. There's then also the contracting workforce, and we see around about 80% currently that are contractors that are going through the CISS program that are self-paying, and they are what we term UTR, Construction Industry Scheme employees. They're off books. They're not employees, but they are trained and competent. We've got several umbrella organisations in the UK where you can call in on agency labour, and that's the type of labour that we use. Any other questions? Oh. Well, it is a recognised trade by the Construction Industry Training Board. What's sad is that it isn't, and it's woeful. We see it as a career not of choice, of people happen upon it. Actually, the majority of people who we see that have come into it by choice, it's through family members. Son, come to work with me, let's get into scaffolding. We've got 3 key routes at the moment. We see the ex-military, the returning citizens, stroke ex-offenders coming in. Those are 2 key groups. And in the UK, we have a major challenge with about 9.4 million people currently on welfare. And so we are now looking at how we can extend the virtues of scaffolding. I joined the sector. In the UK, our military, I love this. This is only in the UK could we have this. Join the submarines. Come and be a submariner. Secret Service. They don't say, oh, by the way, you're going to be sleeping for 2 months in a bed with another man. Don't pick on the negatives, do they? They talk about Secret Service, secret, yeah. And what do we do as a sector? Oh, it's cold, it's wet, it's hard work. We don't talk about actually it's very good pay. You're outdoors all day. You're working in one of the best environments of engineering and creativity that you can actually work in. And why on earth aren't you actually thinking about, well, as a young lad, I loved working on great big climbing frames. Come on, why don't we work on the positives of what we do? And that's what we've got to do. And CITB, we're working with the ECITB, who are the 2 industry training boards within the UK that are fundamentally working to inspire. But we've got one trade, one scaffolding mention in amongst 65 other trades within construction. The other aspect is we're not just construction. 60% of what we do in the UK, yes, is construction, but 40% is industrial, marine, aviation. Harry Potter's current movie, one of my members is currently doing the staging. The Olympics last year, again, a UK-based contractor was actually doing all the staging. Scaffolding's not just that, and we've got to inspire those future people, those future scaffolders to come in and see that and be part of that. No final questions? Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to meeting you all at the gala dinner and over the next day. Thank you very much.